Welcome everyone to PFA's webinar, Back at Work, How to Safeguard Your Mental Well-Being. We have looked forward to welcoming you to this webinar, and in the studio with me today I have Vibeke Lunding Gregersen, who is an authorized psychologist and CEO of Mindwork. My name is Jesper Stensen and I'm head of PFA's corporate and organizational customers. I think many of us are looking forward to slowly being able to come back to the offices and meet more and more of our colleagues. At PFA, we'd like to contribute to making it a good and safe and effective restart and return to daily life for everyone. I'm pleased to soon invite Vibeke to guide us through the next hour or so, where she will tell us more about what you as an employee should be mindful of with regard to mental health as you return to the workplace. Our program today will run for approximately 60 minutes, and Vibeke will use the first 50 minutes until approximately 5 minutes after 6 o'clock to show us a number of slides and guide us through the program. Then there will be time for questions, and we will round off the webinar at 6:15. Please feel free to ask your questions during the webinar. You can do this by taking a look at the top right-hand corner where you will see an engagement bar where there is a tab called questions. Please use that one for answering or asking your questions rather. We will then address the questions after Vibeke's presentation, but please, during the presentation, write your questions as they pop up. The chat is also open. We need to share a link with you during the webinar. Please don't use the chat for questions. Use the questions tab for questions. Yes. And finally, you can put the video player in full screen view. That will make it easier for you to see the details on the slides that Vibeke will show you. You can do this by moving the cursor across the bottom right-hand corner of the video player, and that will bring up the full screen view button, and click on that, and then simply press escape to exit the full screen view. We will be recording the webinar and we'll send you a link with the recording afterwards if you would like to share it with colleagues or others. And it will also be through this link that you can download Vibeke's slides from today. And now, Vibeke, over to you.
Thank you, Jesper. I'm just going to move into the middle here and then start by saying thank you to PFA for arranging these webinars where we focus on mental health and well-being during and after this corona pandemic. And then welcome to all of you. Today is about humans, about our emotions, reactions, and behavior, and hence insights into the human brain and nature is a good starting point and will be the foundation for today's webinar. We start with a short trip into the brain, then we look at pandemic stress, and after that we will, based on compassion and psychological safety, look at how we can prevent and create a framework that supports well-being, performance, and collaboration. And before we finish, I will also give you some ideas to how you can actually give your brain better working conditions and how you can enhance well-being and balance for yourself and your colleagues. Now, it's a very special situation that we are in right now. While positive news about highly effective vaccines gives us new hope, it doesn't change the fact that a lot of people are struggling, and that may be the case for months to come. In crisis psychology, we talk about 3 key issues that define the impact a crisis can have on our mental health. These are the nature of the crisis, the duration of the crisis, and the risk of reoccurrence. And here, Corona must be a pretty strong candidate on all 3 factors or key issues. Researchers have studied the Danish population during the pandemic, and their studies show that our well-being is significantly reduced compared to before. Studies show large increase in loneliness, and Danes in general score higher on anxiety and depression during Corona compared to measurements before the pandemic. And in many of the workplaces that I talk to, they have seen increase in sick days, where during the first wave, they actually saw quite a big decrease in sick days. The increase is starting now again. If we look back at the year that has passed, we started out by seeing a lot of energy and creativity. We were together even though we had to be apart, and despite worry and uncertainty, solutions were found and acted upon. Over the summer and the fall, the situation became somewhat normalized. We got used to a new everyday life, and most of us probably thought that the worst was over. And then the second wave hit, the second lockdown, and the different mutations appeared, sending us right back to where we started. There's light at the end of the tunnel, but it can feel a bit like running a marathon where the finish line keeps being moved out of sight every time we thought we were almost there. So we are experiencing what in crisis psychology would be called battle fatigue, or what we would call corona fatigue. Of course, it's not all bad. There has been tremendous learning. Many have gained new perspectives on life and have experienced meaningfulness and purpose. And of course, we must believe and hope that we will get through the pandemic, because we will. That is what humans can do. We can face great challenge and crisis, but we get through them and we rise again. But there is an important task in terms of prevention and alleviating, because our mental health is under enormous pressure, and it's going to place great demands on workplaces, but also on all of us in the time to come. So now we're going to have to take a look at the human brain. Now, the human brain is a paradox. It's amazing, but it's also a challenge. And it is our common human starting point, no matter who we are. Whether we are managers or employees, male or female, from Asia or Europe, whether we are director, doctor, carpenter, or engineer, we have the brain in common. The human brain is not something to be explained in an instant, and I could talk for days about the things being presented to you in the next 5 minutes. But we cut to the chase, because what we modern people need to remind ourselves and each other of is actually very simple. The brain is amazing, it's marvelous, but it is most of all a terrible mess. The brain consists of parts that are at least 120 million years old and originate from animals. This is what we call the old brain, which primarily focuses on survival and reproduction. This is the part of the brain that focuses on food, sex, and power, on fight, flight, status, and dominance. The old brain has been developed and optimized over 118 million years. Then the last couple of million years, we developed the new brain. Now, this is the special human part of the brain, the part that made us intelligent and that we only have in common with ourselves. It's the new brain that has given us our special abilities for imagination, for planning, analysis, and interpretation, for creativity and innovation. But it is also the new brain that can make us worry and be self-critical in a very special human way that is totally different from what animals can do. There are no dogs, cats, or other animals that lie sleepless over COVID-19, whether it would be a threat to them or not. Now, in order to fully understand how our brain can challenge us, let's take a look at the brain's control center that is made up of 3 emotional regulation systems. This is where the brain is able to regulate our state, how we feel, and consequently our behavior, what we do. While we take this brief tour into the control center, you may try to think about what emotions and reactions that you have experienced in the last 2 or 3 months. First, here we have the red system, our threat system. This is designed for the sole purpose of making sure that the threats we meet do not kill us, and thereby making us evolutionary redundant. The threat system activates strong negative emotions like fear, anger, and disgust, and it's the strongest of the three emotional systems. The red system is our alarm system, our better safe than sorry system, making sure that we react fast and instinctively. Or, as evolutionary psychologists would put it, you can have lunch many, many times in life, but you can only be lunch once. That's the essence of the threat system. Survival comes first, the rest can wait. Now, if you turn to the drive system, the blue system, this system guides, motivates, and encourages animals and humans to desire, perform, and pursue. The blue system ensures that we stay on the lookout for opportunities, that we take some chances, and move forward and constantly progress. The blue system activates strong positive emotions like joy and excitement to stimulate behavior where we set the pace a bit, where we add a bit of pressure, and it makes us perform. Now, all living animals have a version of a drive and a threat system, but the soothing system, the green system, we only share with humans and mammals. Now, the green system ensures that we can find peace, safeness, and contentment as a counterweight to the fight, flight, and pursuit of the two other systems. The green system is also about contact and attachment between people, and it's essential for our survival. We are social animals. We are dependent on our flock, and our children are completely dependent on receiving care and protection in order to survive. When the green system is activated, we can be content for a while, and we can be satisfied with the state of things. And for humankind, the soothing system is crucial because the calmness it contains actually keeps our old primitive brain in check. It connects our new rational human brain and gives us a wider option of thoughts, reflections, and considerations. There are no good or bad systems in the brain, no right or wrong systems. We need them all, each for its own purpose. The key word here is balance. But for many, even a completely normal day in ordinary life in modern society would create imbalance in the three systems. And when we then add a global crisis, it does not get any easier. All three systems are affected. It may look very different depending on who you are, but we are all affected by the situation. Now, our threat system is on high alert because there is a concrete threat to our health, and with the new mutations, worries might once again be rising. We can all be affected by COVID-19. We can have relatives who may be affected. Add to this all the things we as a society do to gain control of the situation, the lockdown of Denmark with all the consequences that follow. Most of us experience uncertainty, worries, perhaps frustration during this time, and this is all signs of an active threat system. An activated blue system or a threat-activated blue system can put pressure on the urge to cope, fix, and to succeed in some people. We prioritize, we act, we find solutions, but with the long duration of the crisis, it can actually be difficult to access the motivation. Now, in addition to this, many will also find that the blue system is inhibited because there are things that we cannot or must not do. Many of the activities that can provide energy and joy are not available. And at the same time, we are now also in a situation where we are prevented from doing the things that would normally help to calm our threat system. For instance, to be in contact with other people. In other words, what would normally activate our green system is not available, and that can increase the threat activation in some people, especially those who are alone and during this time have limited contact with other people. Now, in crisis, our need for safeness, closeness, and contact with other people is great, and it's really difficult to accommodate in this situation that we are in the middle of. Now, There will be a link in the chat. And if you activate that link, you will be sent to a page called Polls Everywhere. In here, you can write in one word which emotions and reactions. You can write more than one word, but see if you can describe your emotions and reactions in one word. If you write them there, then we will be able to see all your different reactions here. Now, this would give us a sense of our common state, the feelings and reactions we might be sharing, also how different it might be for all of us. So try to, if you can describe it, it can be anything from frustration that is on the screen now. It can be loneliness. It can be flexibility and hope. There are no right or wrong. All you have to do is write. You're going to get like 30 minutes or so to share your experiences. And some of the words coming up here is isolation, boredom, frustration, the feeling of being trapped, but also motivation and flexibility, loss, freedom, anxiety. Now, what is happening on the screen here that you will see when you return to the webinar is that the words that many of you are writing, they will be the biggest one on the screen here. And it gives us an experience or a sense of all these different reactions that might be occurring in each of you. Isolation, worry, stress, boredom, frustration, flexibility is still there, scared, hope, possibility, and loss. Thank you so much for your participation here. It's really helpful, I think, for many to be seeing how we can feel and share some of the same reactions. Thank you so much. Now, I have been doing this exercise with quite a few people during the Corona crisis. And what I can share with you is that there seems to be some changes where even though we see both positive and negative reactions and emotions in the things that you are writing here, there seems to be an increase in negative reactions and emotions as this situation seems to be going on and on. So if you also feel that, it is quite normal to have these reactions. You see also exhaustion and motivation is showing up here. Thank you so much. I'm now going to continue the show to try to explain also how we can understand some of the reactions and also some of the changes we're seeing in the emotions and reactions that people are experiencing now. Now, during the first wave, we saw an increased activation of both the threat and the drive systems, and less in the green system. But during this second wave, we see that not only the green system, but also the blue system is beginning to be less activated. Now, it is this imbalance that characterizes corona fatigue in many, and which can develop and lead to mental health problems in some. Now, one of the things that is key to this crisis is that even though we are in this together, our situations are very different. Now, in this model here, the threat system is represented in the red circle and our drive and soothing systems in the inner blue and green circle. On one hand, then, we can also have very different workloads, and we can have different degrees of social stimulation. Now, before Corona, most of us have experienced periods with high work pressure, if you go to the top of the model here. But for most of us, we will quite soon, bounce back into the middle. And this is important because too much work pressure for a long time will increase our risk of stress reactions. Most of us have probably also experience being socially overstimulated from time to time. Now, a good long Christmas holiday with the whole extended family can be a tad demanding for most people. But fortunately, even Christmas has an end. We can also have periods with very low work pressure, or it could be lack of challenge, lack of variation in our work. Now, this can affect our motivation, and it can be stressful if it drags on. And then, of course, we can all have periods in our lives where our social life is not as we would like it to be, placing us out here on the far right. Now, in an ordinary everyday life where we are in reasonable balance, we will predominantly find ourselves in that inner blue-green circle with small detours into the red, where there could be some kind or some degree of threat activation. But during Corona, however, more and more people have found themselves in the red circle. And a very important point here is that we have been here for a long time. Now, so this model gives us a cue to how we, despite very different conditions, can all be burdened during these times. Now, up here in the top left corner, we would have colleagues or co-workers who have had high workload and have been home with the family, maybe have had children who have needed attention. This can create high pressure and what we could call relational overstimulation. Now, down here in the low right corner, we would have colleagues or employees who might have been sent home, who are isolated, where both loneliness, lack of work, and perhaps even job insecurity can be quite stressful. The point here is that both high and low workload, over and under stimulation, can actually create an imbalance in the emotional regulation systems, and that can increase the risk of stress. This model can also be used to create sort of a mutual understanding of each other's reactions, even though our situations can be quite different. Now, let's take a closer look at what symptoms and reactions we might expect. The most common response to pandemic stress are the feeling of loneliness and reduced quality of life. Worry and anxiety can increase. We may experience lack of energy and sadness. When we are out of balance, many will also feel inadequate. Feeling disillusioned is a common and expected response to a crisis that changes our lives. This feeling, though, can hold us to the experience that the pandemic has profound and negative consequences for our reality and thus affect both motivation, mental well-being, and our energy. When we are under pressure or when we are unbalanced, it will also affect our behavior in different ways. Now, the good thing about that is that then we know what we should be looking for in ourselves as well as in other people. Now, so if you look to the right of the slide here, you will see examples of behaviors. It could be something like social withdrawal. That is when we are suddenly not present online. We withdraw from joint activities. This is also when we feel really, really busy, but we don't get any work done. Maybe we start forgetting appointments, or we find it difficult to focus and concentrate. This is where we are unable to sit still and listen and be present. It is the constant interruptions when we have no time, no patience to listen to other people speak. And then it could be these emails without introduction or conclusion. This is where the first email sort of looks like number 17 in a chat. No hello, no dear, no any other way of greeting you, just straight to the point. And if you're really lucky, you get a nice auto signature at the end of the email. The fuse may be short, conflict may rise, in and out groups may start forming, providing fertile ground for power struggles and internal competition. As you might see, this is not necessarily very pretty or constructive, but I can assure you that it is very, very human. It's one of those things that can happen when we are under pressure. No matter what situation we are in, what conditions we live under, we may be vulnerable to experience symptoms of pandemic stress. And this can and it will have major consequences for our lives in the time to come. It will also have consequences for our work environment. So we have to find ways of taking care of each other. Now, from a psychological perspective, reopening can be complicated and can be difficult for some people. We need to sort of slowly approach each other again, and that process can be associated with both challenges but also ambivalence. We may be torn between the desire to be together on one hand and the worry of infection on the other hand. We may be full of hope that all will be well, and at the same time be struck by the fear of the mutations and a third wave. The reopening is like opening a door to a room that has recently been dangerous. Now, reapproach is to dare to take the first steps into that room that still might feel a bit unsafe. It may take time before we feel secure around people again, and this is one of the great human challenges right now. See, we need other people to survive, to live, to thrive, but during a pandemic, other people pose a potential risk, and some will experience the world as an unsafe place. That can affect the joy of going back to work again. What we need to do is sort of accommodate each other's diversity and acknowledge that reapproachment is a process that may take some time. But we need to practice. We need to practice by taking small steps because our relationships with other people will protect us and ensure our well-being and mental health in the long run. And this is where compassion comes into the picture. Now, Corona has made it clear for many that relationships, caring, and empathy are essential both for our professional and private lives. Compassion is rooted deep in our nature, but it is not something that has been given much attention in modern society, and that is a shame. To begin with, I think we should see if we can get a sense of what compassion is. And I need you to participate in a small experiment. Now, sit back, sit comfortably, and close your eyes. It's just going to take 10 seconds. Now, close your eyes, and now think of what is most important to you in your life. Think about the most important thing in your life. Now, please open your eyes again. Thank you so much. As a psychologist, people often ask me if I can read their mind. And of course, I can't read people's mind. But today I'm going to give it a try anyway. I'm going to begin by guessing some of the things that you did not think of. For instance, your targets for this quarter, the company's financial report, your salary or bonus this year. And I'm pretty sure you didn't think of your pension. I know that you thought of one or more of the people that matters most to you in your life. And that is what compassion is all about. And now you know that psychologists actually can read your mind. Now, compassion is about good and healthy connections between people. And there's actually a deep wisdom in this because healthy connections predict both our physical and mental health. Everything from blood pressure to depression and how long we live is positively influenced by healthy connections. And compassion and healthy connections has brought people or humans to where we are today. Because the most valuable principle of evolution is our ability to connect and care for one another. We are not here because we are the biggest or the strongest. There are far bigger, far stronger, and far more robust animals than us humans. At birth, humans are without comparison the most incomplete and helpless of animals. Our children are the ones with the greatest need for love and caring commitment. But actually, that became our greatest evolutionary advantage. It is care and commitment which became the key to our large human brain and therefore to our success. Because in order for our offspring to survive, we have had to develop a very large human brain, which contains precisely the neural systems needed to create motivation and desire to take care of other people. Without care and attachment between humans, without compassion, we would not have survived. And then what is compassion? I mean, other than a human characteristic that is related to healthy connections and care. Now, when I talk to people about this, some people think of words such as compassion being associated with warmth, care, kindness, empathy, understanding. But some people also get negative associations when I mention the word compassion. It can be words like compassion being a weakness, pity, self-absorption, softness, or passivity. But of course, that is not what I mean when I talk about compassion. Now, sometimes it can be helpful to sort of put a face to it. So now I'm going to need your help again. Now, there's a link in the chat. If you activate that one more time, you get into polls everywhere again. And I will ask you to write which famous people, dead or alive, that you associate with the word compassion. Which famous people do you associate with compassion? Now, let me tell you, I have done this exercise with thousands of people now, and I have a top 3-5, and we always get that. First one up here is Mother Teresa and Obama and Michelle Obama. Okay, just go on and write all the people that you could consider sort of being the picture of compassion. Jesus, Princess Diana, Dolly Parton, someone wrote, she's fantastic. Gandhi, Desmond Tutu, I would think it was, yes. Great. Now I can tell you that we have definitely made a top 3. We might have made a top 5 as well. Thank you so much for your participation. Dalai Lama came up here now. It's not that there are any right or wrong answers to this question, but I just have a little list of people that are the ones that show up most time. And let me show you that list now, and we will see this. Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Dalai Lama, Martin Luther King, Barack Obama, Princess Diana, and Jesus. Now, so you actually made a top 7. So that is pretty good work. Thank you so much for participating. Now, I don't imagine that any of you would describe these people as weak, self-absorbed, or passive. But we might agree that they have all had wisdom, that they have had courage, strength, and that they have cared for other people and their well-being. And if we look closer at the corona crisis, we can ask ourselves which words we would use to describe the people who have been at the front line of this crisis. Those who, at considerable risk of becoming infected themselves, have taken care of the rest of us. And which words, regardless of our political standing, our personal preferences, would we use about the leaders who have had to make difficult decisions for our country, our workplaces, and our lives during the pandemic? Decisions that have basically been about caring for people's lives and looking after each other. And that is what compassion is all about. Compassion is about having well-being at heart, well-being for yourself and others. This also means that compassion is about noticing when yourself or your colleagues are not well, and about the will to actually do something about it. This is why compassion is about courage, about the courage to take a step forward when we face challenges in ourselves and each other, to make the choice to turn to and relate to the challenge instead of turning away. And to do this, we need caring. So compassion is about caring, commitment, and connections. Compassion is based on our ability to care for each other. That is what has ensured our survival and the reason why healthy connections is the foundation for both well-being and performance. If we are to contribute with sustainable solutions, if we have well-being at heart, we need to be committed and engaged. Hence, compassion is about wisdom and insight into the human brain, human nature, and the importance of healthy connections is precisely that, sources of great wisdom. And finally, compassion is about strength, the strength to relieve and prevent, the strength to do the necessary things, even when it means making difficult decisions, setting boundaries, and speaking out. Because that's compassion too. Compassion is not about what you do. Compassion is about how and why you do what you do. When the goal of your actions is to be helpful, when you act because you have well-being at heart, then you act with compassion. Let's then again turn to our current situation. Now, one thing that is central here is that we will be experiencing this differently again, even though we are in it together. And no reaction is truer than others. It is just as all right to be uneasy about the opening as it is to rejoice and feel relief. The task when we return to the workplace will be to accommodate this diversity, to talk about it so that we can prevent mistrust and stress. It's about showing compassion and creating psychological safety. If we are to deal with situations of increased stress, we need to create an atmosphere of safety for everyone. And science actually shows that safety is also what best predicts performance. Now, Amy Edmondson, she is a professor from Harvard Business School. She received an international award in 2019 for the best new idea in management based on her research into psychological safety. Now, according to Amy Edmondson, psychological safety is a shared belief that it is safe to be oneself and take interpersonal risks in your workplace. It is knowing that we can speak our minds, ask questions, have concerns, make suggestions, or even talk about mistakes without being punished and humiliated. Psychological safety is an expression of compassion and healthy connections, a culture where there's room for everyone. When we feel safe and connected, we can calm the threat system, we can get access to the new brain, and thereby we can be creative, we can be innovative, and we can find solutions together. When we create psychological safety, we have a work environment where people dare to participate, dare to be in doubt, to speak their mind and be themselves. The feeling of being part of a community and being together to solve the challenges is associated with better learning and well-being. And it makes really good sense that psychological safety is what best predicts performance and creates well-being and also healthy working lives. It lies very deep in humans that we depend on other people to be able to learn and develop to be able to survive. The new brain, the special human part of the brain, is conditioned by care, connection, and contact between people. And therefore, it makes so good sense that work environments with psychological safety creates both good results, but also good working lives. So we need to find ways to use each other to create safety and thereby also well-being and balance. Now, right now, it is tough for many, but we don't talk about it much, perhaps on the assumption that it makes it worse or that it is useless because we can't do anything about it. Now, the problem is that this can leave us with the experience of being alone with the difficulty, that we are the only ones feeling like this. And that won't make it any easier. Now, this is why we need to listen and share experiences, because it creates a sense of normalcy that makes it possible to ask questions and ask for help. So talk to the people around you. Of course, we shouldn't talk about difficult things all the time, but we should make room for that possibility as well as all of the other things that we need to engage in. because it's alleviating when we share thoughts and worries, and it can also help us to rebuild a strong community where we take care of each other. But when we are under pressure, when our emotion regulation systems are out of balance, then the old brain might enter the stage, and here we are more likely to make these them-us distinctions we can create in and out groups, simply because it instinctively feels like others are either with us or against us. This is when even small disagreements turns into big ones, and conflicts can arise over the smallest things. We must remember that these are common human reactions when we are under pressure. But if we are aware of it, we can choose not to do what our old brain tells us. So when you feel irritation and frustration over colleagues, whether it's justified or not, when there's a disagreement or maybe a conflict lurking just below the surface, then start by taking a step back, pause, and take a few deep breaths before you act. Invite your new brain to come onto the stage. And there are these two considerations that might be helpful in calming that old brain. Now, the first one is this one. Remember to give the benefit of the doubt. It's difficult times, many are challenged. So when you feel your own threat system is being activated, whether it's due to something that you or your colleague have done or not done, then stop, pause, and give the benefit of the doubt to yourself and other people. And consider how you can be helpful, especially when well-being and balance are challenged. Being helpful includes both the little things that you can do and the larger things that might be necessary. Sometimes it's about taking a break, going for a walk, or drinking a cup of coffee. When we return, there are several things that we can do to create balance, safety, and well-being, and to give the brain good working conditions. Because, to put it mildly, our brain has been overworked during the last year. Now, first, we should remember that we have been in a really strange situation. Life as we knew it changed from one day to the next. Many have become accustomed to living and working under very different circumstances. We have had limited social interactions. We have been working without disruptions from large office spaces, and also limited or different contact with customers, with colleagues, with partners. We have in many ways actually been hibernating, and this can have an impact on our brain and nervous system. Some will therefore experience being more sensitive to noise and being overwhelmed faster or overstimulated in social context or when we are back at the office. Therefore, we might need to think about gradually rehabilitating the nervous system, both at work and privately. This is actually just as if you had recovered from a broken leg and you wanted to start running again. You wouldn't start by running a marathon, and neither should you do in this situation. We may have a great urge to try and catch up for lost time, both privately and professionally. It can be tempting also for workplaces to just sort of hit the accelerator, both in regards to tasks and activities. But it is important to remember the balance and maybe slow down a bit. When something is important, it's often a really good idea to sort of hurry slowly so that we get the things done right. Try to think about slow habituation and rehabilitation. Just because we can do it does not mean that we have to do it. So here, less is more. Choose your activities with caution. Choose them carefully. If we just speed away from day one, we risk our engines burning out. Now, another thing you should be mindful of is structure. You might have heard about the importance of structure before, but in my experience, there is no harm in repeating this message because it can be really helpful for our well-being and balance. By creating new structures and routines in a changed reality, you achieve a sense of control and normalcy. The lockdown of Denmark, the lockdown of the world, and all the changes it has brought has changed the normal structure of everyday life for many of us. And Corona might change our life and work forever. The possibility of working from home will become more normal. And therefore, it's important to work with good structures, whether we are at work or at home. When we lack structure in our everyday life, it can be both. It can create really bad habits, but it can also keep us in an experience of unpredictability, loss of control, and crisis. And we actually know from research that structure in particular is of great importance for how we cope through crisis where the loss of control is great. Now, with the time that has passed, I think actually that a good comparison can be found in studies of people who have been held hostage. Now, these studies show that those who do best through captivity, both physically and mentally, are those who have succeeded in creating a kind of structure and fixed routines. So this is really helpful and important if you want to create balance. Now, the next one is about breaks. Now, even before Corona, all natural breaks in our everyday life had disappeared. And this has really contributed to our brains being overworked in modern society. For some reason, breaks have become something that we do in our spare time, and that is a really bad solution because breaks makes us more productive and more creative. And now when our normal everyday structure is suspended, we are even more challenged when it comes to taking breaks. The problem is that our brain really needs breaks to if we are to be able to focus, if we should concentrate, solve problems, and perform. So this should be something that we demand and expect from each other in every serious workplace. So be sure to build regular breaks into your workday structure. And remember that breaks are breaks. Breaks are not to check or write emails, make a call, or check the news. A brain break is a break where we do not stimulate our brain with new information. So enjoy a cup of coffee, go for a short walk, sit down, look into thin air for a couple of minutes. It doesn't have to take long, but it is really important. Now, the next strategy here is about worries. Now, many of us will find that worries arise during this time. It can be hard to avoid, and it's really natural. Many will experience serious consequences from the corona crisis. It can be in terms of illness, financial problems. It can be unemployment or job insecurity. It can be the fear that life will never come back as we knew it, that it will be changed forever. Now, the problem is when we worry a lot and repeatedly, and when the things that we worry about is completely out of our control. It may feel as if you can think or worry your way to an answer, but it is rarely a helpful strategy, and certainly not in a situation where uncertainty is a condition for all of us. Worries can keep us in threat activation. It can make us feel depressed and anxious, and it can give us a sense of hopelessness. So we cannot decide that certain thoughts or worries should not appear in our mind, but we can actually practice moving our attention elsewhere when it happens. It may be helpful to work with worry time. That is a fixed time where you look at the things that you worry about. Now, worry time shouldn't be more than 30 minutes the most. Now, I know this can sound really strange, and it is not easy. You will need to practice, but I can assure you that for many, many people, it is quite helpful. Remember to consider if it is something that you can actually do something about. If you cannot do anything about it, it really doesn't help to spend a lot of time worrying about it. Here it's about meeting yourself and your worries with acceptance and care. If you can do something about it, then make a plan. Now, the final strategy here, I also have 2 bonus strategies, but the final one here is about staying socially connected. I've already talked a lot about the importance of healthy connections and social contact, but if you're isolated, if you still work at home, or if you have colleagues who do, then this is still more important than ever. So call, write, make informal video appointments with colleagues, with friends, with other people in your network. Schedule virtual coffee and lunch meetings. Choose video as often as possible. It gives more nonverbal signals and creates the feeling of contact and safety. Reach out, stay in touch to ensure the experience of being connected with other people, both in your private and professional lives. And when you feel the corona fatigue and you hardly can stand participating in one more Friday bar online or online bingo or the party committee's ladies Kahoot, do it anyway. Remember that when we really don't feel like it, it might be the time we need it the most. Now, we're about to finish this webinar. I have given you some perspectives on how you can ensure well-being going into the next phase. I hope it has been helpful, and in a minute there will be time for questions and comments from you. Now, if you forget anything else, everything else that I have told you today, there are 2 things that you can do anytime, anywhere, and it is scientifically proven to have effect on your brain and your nervous system. Now, the first one is breathe. Just a few minutes of soothing breathing directly affects your pulse and heart rate. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system and your green system, and you can do it anywhere, anyhow, anytime. And it is almost as good as this last one. Smile. Smile at each other, smile to yourself. A smile is not only the shortest way between 2 people, it is also the shortest way to compassion. And finally, I want to say this to you. When it feels a bit tough, it's because it is tough right now. Remember to meet both yourself and others with compassion, with care and wisdom. I wish you the strength to persevere. Remember that we will get through this. We will do it best if we do it together. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vibeke, for a very inspiring presentation. And we have a few questions from our listeners. And the first one is, do you have any advice or even small pointers for someone who is in a fairly toxic working environment, but may not be in a position to change it yourself?
In that situation, I will say, and I know that what the listener is hinting here is that the leader might not be helpful. If you are in an organization with an HR organization, you should reach out to them or your employee representatives, because as it is in Denmark, we have a responsibility as a workplace to ensure healthy, good working conditions for all people. So that is something I would do for sure if you're not in a position to do anything about it yourself. And then do anything to take care of yourself. Maybe practice compassion, reach out to other people in your network to get the support that might be helpful in a situation like this. But first of all, reach out to your organization. They have a commitment to ensure good working conditions.
Thank you. And the next question, what is the likelihood that the companies will allow their employees to start slowly? Reality is there was additional pressure to do more in the last year to overcome any downturn due to the pandemic, and the pressure will likely continue for a while after the opening. What can we realistically do as employees to start slowly when coming back to the office in this situation?
Yeah. I talk to a lot of leaders, and we've been doing these webinars for leaders as well. And what we always talk to them about is the importance of looking into the individual needs of employees, considering their specific situation. Now, all workplaces have an interest in securing well-being, because if we just keep pushing our employees in a situation where they might be in risk of developing stress, then it won't be helpful for the employee, but it won't be helpful for the organization either. It is really, really, if we should look at it that way, it's really expensive to have employees becoming sick from stress. So I know there's a pressure on it. I would suggest to you that you might invite your managers, your HR department to look at some of these webinars, to also consider that it might actually be a much better solution in the long run, that we start slowly, that we consider the individual needs, because the price we will pay if we don't think about this might be even greater. So talk about aligning expectations, look into your possibilities of maybe some flexibility in your work settings. You should talk to your leader about this and see if there's any way that they can be helpful and accommodate some of the needs you might have. It might not be all needs, but hopefully some needs might be met.
But I can definitely understand the question and also see the dilemma, because
yes,
this can be a very real reality for a lot of people in a lot of companies. So yes, please feel free to go into to pfa.dk. As Vibeke said, we have had these webinars also for HR and for leaders, and the links and the webinars are in there. So maybe a little hint to guide HR or your leader in that direction could also be. But of course, not everyone is open to this way of thinking. So that is definitely a dilemma. But it could be worth a try.
Yeah, definitely.
In a way, I feel happy about going back to work twice a week already. At the same time, I don't feel like I want to leave my home. What would you consider a good way to cope with this?
Well, that's it depends on the reasons why it feels unsafe to leave the home. For some people, that's a reality because you might be in a high-risk population for getting COVID, and then it's about also reaching out to the workplace, making sure that there's that the physical environment has been taking care of the risk for infection, if that is what is worrying you. And I would again suggest that, because it's a difficult question, because we don't know what the reason is for why the person is feel unsafe going away from home. But I think the very important thing here is also the feeling of being happy about getting back into work, because that can give some energy and some motivation. So maybe it's a situation of balancing those needs, making sure that the work environment makes us feel as safe as possible, and then taking the opportunity of getting in touch with our colleagues.
Okay, thank you. And the next question, I feel a bit worn out. It has in some ways been good to be able to work at home, and I'm a little worried about the work pressure when we have to go back again. Is there anything I can do, or can I ask my manager for help?
And it's a bit the same dilemma as we also heard before. I think what I encourage people to do here is that we have to start these conversations. We have to talk about the flexibility, opportunities of flexibility, aligning expectations, because it's one of the things we actually, all these studies that have been done of the Danes' well-being during the COVID, one of the things that has come out very clearly is that many employees feel that they are not able to deliver as they should. And that's a lot of pressure, because we want to do a good job when we get to work. No one wakes up in the morning not wanting to do a good job. And one of the things that people say are most helpful is when they align expectations with their manager or their leader. So again, reach out to your manager, see if you can align expectations as to what will be the best way for you to get back. And also, of course, considering that there will definitely be some businesses that has a lot of catching up to do when they get back. We just need to find balance so we don't compromise our mental health.
Yeah, maybe also asking your manager to prioritize between the the different tasks that, okay, if you have 10 different things to do,
Exactly.
okay, what is the most important, what is the second, and align those expectations also can also be one way of
Yes.
attacking that problem.
Yes.
And then we have a final question from Judith. A question for one of my children in France where they work. Confinement opening up, confinement, available vaccines, not available vaccines, that causes a lot of anxiety. They find apps of mindfulness and such are not helpful. When they experience a deaf to compassion company, what to do? Can you recommend any readings?
Yes, I can recommend many readings here. For instance, Professor Paul Gilbert has been writing a lot of books about compassionate mind training that you might want to look into. We also have a book called the Compassionate Mind Workbook, where you actually get a lot of concrete exercises. It is by Dr. Chris Irons, who is also located in the UK. I might be able to give PFA a list of recommended readings if people are interested in hearing some of these or reading some of these. And you can also find, if you go into the Compassionate Mind Foundation website, you can find audios where you can actually listen to compassionate mind training audios, and you can find a lot of reading material there as well.
Thank you very much for those tips. And we are now approaching 6:15. So thank you very much, Vibeke, for your interesting perspectives and presentation. And thank you to all of you out there for listening, and have a great evening.